Welcome to Algebra 2, Semester 2, Unit 10 and 7B. This is the section on shift happens. I need you to turn in your packet to page 8. We're going to look at shifting now. There's 4 of these, so we're going to be graphing all over. You're gonna get used to these kind of graphs, or you should be kind of used to them. Always looking back at the parent function. This is the parent function on page 8. It's square roots. So today what we're doing is we're looking at when we put a 2 underneath there with it. So this time we really do need to take either our answers, or actually we can't take the answers. We would need to take the value and actually plug it in there, because it happens before we take the root. So we take -4 plus 2 would be a -2. I don't know where to write this. Let's go down here to write this. So square root -4 plus 2 would equal square root -2. As we've discussed, you can't have a square root of a negative, so that would be undefined. Square root of -2 plus 2 ends up equaling square root of 0. So square root of 0 is 0. Square root of -1 plus 2, -1 plus 2 is 1, so the square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 0 plus 2 equals square root of 2. Square root of 2, if we do it in a calculator, is about 1.4. Square root of 1 plus 2 is 3. Square root of 3 is right around, I would say that must be right around 1.7. I didn't plug it into a calculator, but I'm guessing. Okay, 2 plus 2, we'll do it over here, square root. 2 plus 2, that would be square root of 4. Square root of 4 is 2. And now square root of 4 plus 2 is square root of 6. Square root of 6, I would think is around 2.3 or 4. Okay, plug it into calculator if you want to be a little bit closer. So when we graph this, we know at -2 we go 0. So we go -2, 0. -1 is 1. Zero is 1.4. 1 is 1.7. 2 is 2. We can kind of get our curve in there. What has happened from our parent graph over to our radical x plus 2 graph? Take a minute to look at that. Do you see how it looks like about the same curve? But it's just been shifted over to -2. Now let's look close at the equation. What has caused that shift to -2? What in here has caused this shift to go -2? Because when we didn't have it, the parent function, it was at 0, 0. But now with this shift, what is it that we changed? If you notice that it's got this +2, that's exactly right. That +2 caused the graph to shift left 2. That's what that does. That +2 causes the parent graph to shift left 2, shifts left 2. Now normally we say a positive will go to the right, But on all these functions, the way that I remember it is if the shift is happening inside of the function, it actually causes it to shift the opposite way than it looks like it would. Okay? So, which way do you think this one will shift? If it says -2 and it's inside the function, this one shifted left 2 when it was +2. What way do you think this one would shift? If you say you think it's going to shift right 2, shifts right 2, let's check and see if you're correct. So again, because it's inside the function, we have to plug this actually right in there. So -4 and -2 would be a -6. Radical -6 is undefined. -2 and -2 is -4. Remember, when the signs are alike, you add them. So -4, radical is undefined. -1 and -2 is -3. The radical is still negative, so it's undefined. 0 minus 2 is -2, it's still undefined. 1 minus 2 is -1, it's still undefined. Now we get to 2 minus 2, which is 0. That's our 0 starting point. 4 minus 2 would be 2. That would be radical. 4 minus 2 equals radical 2, which is about 1.4. So now we can see we truly did have it shift right 2, because that's 2, 0. And now this 4 is 1.4. It's just starting the curve to go up that way. So good guess if you guessed that. That's a shift left or right, and it occurs when it's inside the function brackets. Let's turn to page 10 and see it happening with a cube root. Now, look on the cube root, and you see where it crosses right here. I always take those 3 points at -1, 0, and 1, and I just remember that's my vertex, my turning point of the graphs. Now I come down here and I see that those 3 dots that were right here on the parent graph. Oops, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at my monitor. Those 3 dots that are right along there in the parent graph, they're going to shift which way? If that's inside the function, it's going to shift opposite of what it says. So it should shift, instead of right 2, which is positive normally, instead of being right 2, which is normally the positive, it's going to go the opposite of that, so it would be left 2. And we'll write shifts out here, I'm sorry. Shifts left 2. So let's see if that's true. -27 plus 2 would be a -25, and we want to find the cube root. Cube root of that is roughly 2.7. Negative. -8 plus 2. -8 plus 2 would be radical -6. Actually, cube root -6. I'll just grab a calculator so that I can give you these accurately, so I can see none of them are going to be pretty. In case you want to know how to do it on a calculator, always welcome to grab one of these. All that I do is I get it turned on, and I go, let me see if I have a cube root. That would be a real nice feature here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to refer back to another lesson. I don't see the cube root quickly, so I always do it this way. Rather than take the cube root, I'll just raise it to the 1/3. That's where I get the 3 from there. So I go -6 raised to the parenthesis 1 divided by 3, parenthesis closed. And now, I don't know if you're seeing my screen, I hit enter. That tells me that's about a negative 1.8. Okay. Don't worry if you didn't understand how to plug that into the calculator, just go back, rewind it, and follow the steps on each one and how to plug it in, and then we can talk about it in class. You can rewind and listen to the tape again on how to do it for this one. So, negative 1 plus 2 would be positive 1. Cube root of positive 1 is 1. 0 plus 2 is 2. Cube root of 2 is 1.25. 1 plus 2 is 3. Cube root of 3 sorry, just a second. Equals 1.4. So here we move over and we start putting these in. Negative 27, we can't do. Negative 8, we can do at 1.8. Negative 1.8. So about right there. Negative 1 is 1. So that tells me it's crossed. This has moved over. So if this point right here moved to there, my guess is this one's going to move to there. We need to plug that in and see if that's true. So this right here would be 1, 2, 3. It would be negative 3. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Cube root of negative 1 is, let me see, oh, I'm off one. That's why that happened. Cube root of negative 1 is negative 1. This one being negative 1, 1 should be there. Now let's plug in a negative 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Cube root of 0 is 0. So we just had these three shift to right there. So if you said that it shifts left 2, you are correct. We just shifted that vertex left 2, and now we can expand back out and look at our graph up here. See the shape of it off of that vertex, and we can complete those lines down here. Sorry, not trying to make you seasick. So now we just complete that graph going this way and this way. It shifted left 2. On this one, it's got a negative 2 in there. What do you predict it's going to shift? If you said it's going to shift right 2, you are so correct, because that's inside of there. So take a calculator and calculate these values, plugging them in, and adding that, or subtracting that 2 from them, and then give me the numbers here, and then go ahead and draw it here. It is going to shift 2 to the right, so you could go ahead and draw it right now. It's just a parent function. Shifted, whoops, shifted over that way. Okay? And I want you to go ahead, pause the video, and do this parent graph on page 12. You're going to do that parent graph. You should know which way it's going to shift off of this plus 3 there. Know which way it's going to shift off of this minus 3. Okay? And just pause the video, finish page 12. On page 14, you're going to be taking this parent graph, shifting it, positive 3 that way, negative 3 this way. Same kind of a shifting as what you've seen in these other pages. Page 16. This is going to shift with a +2. Now I'll show you the easiest way to do this one is look at your parent graph here. Do you see how it's set up? It has an asymptote here and an asymptote here. If you're shifting left or right, such as what we know that these shifts are when they're in the function. So if we have a +2 in that function, the description would be that it's going to shift 2 units which way? If you said 2 units to the left, you are correct. It's always the opposite of what it seems because it's inside there affecting the value before we get done calculating. So when you see that it's going to shift 2 to the left, you simply take your asymptote, the line that it doesn't touch, shift it 2 to the left. So take that asymptote that went down the 0 line, shift it 2 to the left to -2. Your y asymptote that goes this way will stay the same. It hasn't been shifted. And so these are pretty fast to draw because you've still got the same graph out here by these. It's just that the asymptotes have been shifted. So now we're going to have that one going that way, this one going this way, just like up in the parent graph, but it's simply the asymptote that you've shifted. The graph shifts as well, but it's easiest to draw it with the asymptote shifted. Okay, finish up 4 and 5 on all of these functions and then come back to the video. I will do one more shift here before we're done. Okay, this is the other shift that we're going to look at. It is when the shift occurs after the function. Okay, so we take radical -4. This is back to page 8, page 8 and 9. It's their square root transformation activity. Here's your parent function. And I can simply draw it in here lightly so that we don't have to keep changing this page. This is the parent function. It goes like this. Now, if we take the radical of -4, we would get a radical -4, square root -4. We can't have that undefined because we can't add 2 to undefined. Can't add 2 to an undefined, can't add 2 to undefined. That's because you can't have a negative square root. Now we go next. Square root of 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. Square root of 1 is 1, plus 2 is 3. Square root of 2 is 1.4. 1.4 plus 2 would be 3.4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay? So now if we graph this, we're at 0, 2, so here at 0 we move up to 2. At 1 we're up at 3. At 2 we're up at 3.4. At 4 we're up at 4. Do you see we've just taken that parent function and we've taken the graph and just moved it up 2 units. So this shifts 2 units up. And that's because we have that plus 2 after the function. Well, if that one shifts up 2 units, what do you think this one would do where it's got a -2 after the function? If you're saying, oh, well, that one should shift down 2 units, you're absolutely correct. Shifts down 2 units. So we take that parent function that comes off of the origin, it looks like this, and we're going to shift it down 2 units, and it's going to be like that. Now fill in the numbers. -4 square root is undefined. -2 square root is undefined. Square root of -1 is undefined. Square root of 0 is 0. -2 is -2. Square root of 1 is 1. -2 is -1. Square root of 2 is 1.4. -2 is -0.6. Square root of 4 is 2. -2 is 0. And if you look at how we drew that, over here at 1, 2, 3, 4, it was 0. Okay? So that is correct. I want you to go ahead and make sure you're looking at the 3 points right through on a parent graph for the cube root, page 11. Remember, there's the 3 points right through there. Well, those 3 points are going to shift which way when you have a +2? If you said they'll shift up, you're correct. So we would say it shifts 2 units up. Now you take those 3 vertex points and you literally bring them up 1, 2, and bring each of them up 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now you can look back at your parent graph. You can see how you drew it off of that vertex. Just draw it again using this as your vertex now. So we go that way and that way. Now we can fill in our values. -27 cube root is -3. -3 plus 2 is -1. Check it out. -27, oh, it's that way out there. We can't check that one out. Cube root of -8 is -2 plus 2 is 0. So if we come out here to 8, we should know that this is going to come down to the 0 value. -1 cube root is -1 plus 2 is 1. And right there is a -1 up to 1. Cube root of 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Right here at 0, we're up at plus 2. Cube root of 1 is 1, plus 2 is 3. Cube root of 27 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. So out there it would be up at 5. Okay, please continue on. Do number 6 and 7 on pages 13, 15, and 17. Now remember, on 17, you are doing the rational expression, and with rational expressions, as I told you earlier, let me just expand, well, I won't expand it, you can see it now. With the rational expressions, the shifting is easiest to look at your asymptotes. So your asymptotes on the parent function here on page 16 is at 0, 0. Go over to number 6. You know, because it's a plus 2 after the function, it's a shifting going up 2. So you would take your asymptote, and instead of drawing it through the 0, you'd move it up 2 and draw it this way. The vertical asymptote stays on the 0, 0. Whoops, sorry, that should be straight. So on this one, your asymptote will go down 2. So you take that horizontal and shift it down 2. Keep the vertical 1 right through the 0, 0. Okay? Now, just like you did in number 4, you'll just go ahead and move the graph as well to fit the asymptotes. But I really think it's easiest to look at the asymptotes as you shift. It just makes it easier for graphing those. Okay, finish 7 and 8 on all pages, and then come to class, we will work through the rest of these functions together. Thank you very much. That's the end of the videos. It does not mean that it's the, oh, actually, there is one more video. It's 7b rational functions. Have a great night. Thank you.